I'm feeling awful about myself, or I'm feeling bored, or I'm not happy with my life, so I'm just gonna scroll for a while. Is your dream self doing that in your dream reality, your dream version of your life that you are working towards and that will exist in the future? Are you spending your time doing those things? Probably not. So it's then about, in my dream version of my life, I'm not spending 3 hours scrolling, so I don't need to do that today. What can I do instead? We're going to talk about some mindset shifts and some practical things that you can do to reprogram your mind. I want to start off this by saying that we need to acknowledge that sometimes pain can be a good thing. You don't have to be scared of it. I'm starting with this step because this is really important to get into our minds, but I don't want it to sound like you have to suffer in order to make change, or that change will be difficult. It's more that it will be rewarding, even if it can be an at times painful process. So I want to stress that it's not supposed to be like no pain, no gain. That's not the attitude I'm going for here at all. Leaving your comfort zone can be scary. Doing something different or something new can be scary, but it will also be really rewarding for you. It's called your comfort zone for a reason. You are at home there, it's comfortable, and for some things that's great. It's great to have a sense of safety or comfort around certain people, or around our home, or around particular habits that we have developed which are good, around like helpful coping mechanisms that we have. It's good to have a comfort zone in that sense, but when your comfort zone starts to spread and encroach on other things, you're avoiding things using your comfort zone, that is where it's going to be a problem. If you think about what your life is like now versus what you would ideally like it to be, so what your dream reality would be, you might be intimidated by the difference between what you are now and where you want to be. There's a quote that helps me: try to let the gap between where you are now and where you want to be inspire you and not terrify you. If you think about where you want to be, what your dream reality will be, you're probably gonna have to change some things in order to get there. This is the same way as, like, I've been feeling this recently with, I've started running again and I'm getting weird aches and pains. I'm doing something different and I can feel it in my body. So in the same way, if you decide to, we're going to talk about some of the mindset shifts or some practical things you can do if you want to reprogram your mind to create your dream reality. In the same way that I'm feeling it in my body, that I'm trying something new, I'm doing something different and I'm running, you might feel some resistance or uncertainty when you start trying to develop healthy habits different from the ones you are now, when you start trying to get outside of your comfort zone and do something maybe a little bit scary, a little bit intimidating, to try and reach that dream reality. And if you are feeling that discomfort or maybe an increase in anxiety, I find this with social anxiety, which I've worked on a lot, and I now feel a lot better in myself, so I don't feel it so much. I'm not saying it's gone completely, it definitely hasn't. If you can treat situations which are going to maybe test you as things that you can learn from and grow from, and instead of being scared of, oh my gosh, I'm gonna walk in and all these people are gonna be there, or I'm gonna start this new habit and people are gonna be looking at me when I'm running, right? Instead of thinking like that and being scared of it, you can think, oh, this is an opportunity for me to face a difficult situation. And the more you do this, the more you try and reframe it, instead of being scared of something, to look at it as either a learning experience or an opportunity to grow. The more you do this, the more you will kind of crave that uncertainty, just because you can use it then to prove a point to yourself. I find this sometimes with posting videos on YouTube. I will sometimes be like, oh, I feel really scared to post this now, or why don't I post this tomorrow instead? Maybe I need to re-edit it or something. And as soon as I have that thought and that feeling of like uncertainty creeping in my gut, I kind of, now I'm at a point where I'm happy to be feeling that, because I'm like, oh, because I'm feeling that uncertainty and I'm scared and I'm saying, oh, I'll just do this tomorrow, that means I need to do it now. Like, that is a sign for me to act now, and I can treat that feeling, that horrible feeling of this is outside of my comfort zone, I feel a bit uncomfortable, what will people think, what will people say? I can treat that as an opportunity to grow, because I can face it head on, tackle it, instead of being like, oh, I'll do this tomorrow. But the same way, like I'm saying with going running and like my back is hurting or whatever, that means something is changing. If you start like lifting weights and your arms hurt, like I put some stuff in the car yesterday, lifting stuff, and now my arms hurt, that's a sign that I was doing something there that could be like a catalyst for growth. Like I could, if I built on that, that's how you build muscle. But if we're talking about things to do mentally and reframing your mind, reprogramming the way that you see things, instead of being scared of things, treating that pain, that discomfort as a sign that you need to retreat, you can instead welcome the challenge of it, and you will surprise yourself by how eventually you will get to be craving these situations because you can use them as opportunities to grow. So pain can be a good thing. And I mean, if you think about like what pain's role is in your body, yes, it's scary if you're anticipating being in pain, and yes, it's horrible when you're in the moment to be in pain. And this isn't, I'm not going to talk about chronic pain because that's a very different thing. For example, the pain of you go to take something out of the oven without an oven glove on, that's going to hurt. That pain is a good thing. It's keeping you safe because you then know, oh, I've done something wrong there, I need to get an oven glove. Like, why am I trying to take something out of the oven without wearing an oven glove? Pain can be helpful, and people who don't have pain, like if you think about a disease like leprosy where people can't feel pain, they can end up burning their hand. That same person who was going to get something out of the oven, if they had that condition, they would end up burning their hand because they can't feel pain. Thinking of that comparison to physical pain helps me when I am faced with difficult things, like for example applying to jobs and doing job interviews. That's really scary, or it can be scary. I don't want to speak it into existence like I'm really scared, but that's like a new thing and it can be intimidating. But thinking about it in terms of the physical pain example, that pain is useful. There's a reason for it. Similarly, there's a reason for any emotional discomfort. You can learn something from it the same way that that pain is saying, hey, put on an oven glove because you're taking something hot out of the oven. You're learning something there. You can do the same with any emotional pain or emotional discomfort and be like, oh, what can I take from this situation? Like on my vision board for the year, I've got a few quotes, and one of them is, why is this happening? But that's crossed out. And underneath then it says, what is this teaching me? It's really easy, not so much with physical pain because that's like obvious. Why is this happening? Like, why? I took something out of the oven, my hand is burnt, that's why this is happening. But with emotional stuff, we can be like, why am I feeling like this? Why me? Like, why did it have to happen to me? It's very easy to get caught up in self-pity when we feel things aren't going our way, and like, trust me, I've been there. A helpful reframe then, why is this happening? What is this teaching me? What can I learn from this experience? Can I view it as a challenge? Can I view it as an opportunity to grow? Can I remember that pain can be useful? And again, I want to say in those specific settings, this is not about chronic pain because that's a whole other thing. If we start off acknowledging when we want to reprogram our mind, one of the most important reframes is to learn to live in uncertainty. And that's like a whole other video. Not to be scared of that, not to run away from these situations where potentially we could learn things or even grow. You need to change what you're doing now because it's clearly not working. If you're watching a video about how to reprogram your mind to create your dream reality, you need to change something in order to reach that dream reality, whatever that looks like for you. And we're going to talk about hate something, change something, because that can be a helpful phrase. We're going to talk about that a bit later on as well. Another key thing to reprogramming your mind is to stop comparing yourself to other people. This one is a difficult one because it seems automatic sometimes. If you're the same age as someone, you might start comparing where they're at career-wise or what money they make, if they own their own home, where they live, like what country they live in. You might start comparing your situation to them. There is a lot to compare because you're the same age, so you might be like, well, they have this, I don't. And then you start thinking badly of yourself. But if you can shift your mindset away from thinking about what other people are doing, comparing yourself to other people, and instead viewing life as a series of lessons that everyone is going to learn in different ways and at different times. Everyone's story looks different, and even if it looks like they have things all together and they have a great life, an enviable life, one that when you compare your life to theirs, you feel like you come up short. Even if it looks like that, you may find out years later, oh, actually what was really going on was horrible, but we couldn't talk about it. Or I was in a really bad place mentally, even if everything looked like it was going well. Comparison is not going to get you anywhere in terms of creating your dream reality. What good does it do you? You're not then feeling inspired to take action because you're thinking, oh, I'm so far behind, or I'm not good enough, and you're not actually doing anything productive when you are comparing yourself to someone else because there's no action to take there. It's all going on in your head. You're just ruminating on it. If you are insistent on comparing yourself to other people, I think it's only right to compare from the beginning, if that makes sense. So if you think of a particular friend who is very successful in comparison to where you are right now, how you currently feel, or what your reality is currently like, they probably had a very different life to you, or maybe they are more emotionally resilient. Maybe they didn't have bad things happen to them. Maybe they didn't have to deal with mental illness, whereas you have. So their life is just incomparably different to yours. Like, you can't compare where you're at versus where this person is at, because you started off very different. If you want to stop comparing and instead reprogram your mind to focus on you and how you are going to change, or what you can do, instead of just thinking and overthinking about how it's not fair or you wish things were different. Like, things are the way they are, unfortunately or not, but you always have the ability to change if you decide to. And whatever the situation is, you are good enough. Even if by comparing yourself to other people you feel like you're coming up short, or compared to like people your age or people in your career. There are so many ways that we can compare ourselves to others. The way that we look, our personality, the way you speak. It never ends. You could find so many different points of comparison, but you are good enough as you are now. And like, the fact that you're even watching something like this shows that you want to change and have the ability to change, because you clicked on a video about reprogramming your mind. Like, you're interested in this, you are into self-development and you want things to get better. You will have some awareness of what your situation is and you want to know how to change. Like, that is an amazing thing in and of itself. Like, you are good enough, you are enough. That can be uncomfortable to hear or to say, and the comparison can come in. Affirmations can be good because they can inspire you, give you this settled, like grounded feeling, but they can also be counterproductive if you decide you're going to say an affirmation like I am good enough, for example. If you decide you're going to say this affirmation and you're not feeling it, and what's happening instead is you're saying I am good enough, but then that voice in your head is saying no, you're not, and then is listing all of the reasons. Affirmations can be good, but if you find that you keep saying a phrase and you're not feeling it, like you're not feeling this sense of security in yourself and this sense of quiet confidence, if you're not getting that feeling from whatever affirmation you've chosen, whether it's something like I am good enough or I am enough, or something else like I am confident or I am brave, I am strong, I am kind, if you're not actually resonating with it emotionally, then affirmations are not only not helpful, they can be actively harmful. So really pay attention to the way you feel if you're going to use affirmations to stop comparing yourself to other people. Be aware of the way you're feeling when you're saying them, because it could actually be hurting you if you're not feeling it, because it's just then giving more fuel for the voice in your head to be like, you're not good enough. Why are you saying you're good enough? Or you're not strong. Why are you saying that you're strong? Why are you saying that you're a good friend? We don't want to give that voice any more ammunition, because it can be quite loud. So if you find affirmations aren't going to be helpful, just journaling about it, and maybe as well exploring that voice that's saying you're not good enough, or look at you compared to other people. That voice that is bringing up all of these comparisons and making you feel bad about yourself by doing that. You can maybe journal about that. Journaling about it will bring it to light and not let it hide and just be this horrible voice in your ear. It will give you something on paper that you can look at and question the not validity of, because it's not like a scientific thing, but you can actually look at it and think, is this true? And as well, what helps is thinking like, would I say this to my friend? And if the answer is no, which it probably is, because we can be really vicious to ourselves, that voice can be really vicious, just be aware of that and try and counter that. When it's saying you're not good enough, look at what you're doing compared to other people. It's like, okay, is that helpful for me? No. Sometimes I can be sassy with it like that, but other times it can be helpful just to not take any notice of it. It's almost like by paying attention to things, sometimes we can give them more power, or we can treat them as facts. You can then start listening to that voice and giving it legitimacy, being like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough, and you're actually thinking that, and then that becomes part of your belief system that you're just thinking all the time, even though it's not true at all. Be aware of how much power you're giving that voice in your head, the voice that's telling you to compare yourself to others, or that you're not good enough compared to them. You don't need to listen to that. Feelings aren't facts. This is going to be a video full of like little phrases, but these are the things that helped me to reprogram my mind and reframe the way that I look at my life, because there's been so much that has gone wrong, and I know that there are people who look at the way that my life has gone and are like really disappointed, or like, oh, what a waste of potential. Like, people have actually said these things to my face, and yeah, I could go down like a shame spiral and be like, oh my gosh, like, what have I done? This is awful. But like, where is that getting me? And also, I talked about how life is just full of lessons and everyone's story looks different. The stuff that I've learned in these few difficult years is probably stuff that everyone is going to have to learn eventually. I've just learned it at a more inconvenient time where everything is really uncertain. Whereas I have friends who, they have like a settled home, or they have been in their career for however many years now. Things look very different for me than they do for other people. But that doesn't mean that I've wasted anything. I've reprogrammed the way I look at things. I've reframed the way I view my life. Everyone learns everything eventually. We're all going to learn the same lessons. Sometimes the timing is just really inconvenient and you're like, I could have done with this at a later point. Like, yes, okay, let me learn how to have healthier coping mechanisms, but couldn't I have kept them for a while longer? Did things have to happen in this way? Then you can get into like self-pity and being like, oh, why me? Why is it happening to me? Like we talked about, and that's not helpful either. We talked about journaling, and I want to talk about scripting as something that you can do to help get into that feeling. So I said, if affirmations aren't connecting you with that like grounded, safe, loving, gentle feeling, then don't use affirmations, but journaling can be helpful. And if you want to recreate that feeling of quiet confidence in yourself, scripting can be a really good way to do that. The sun. Loving the sun. I thought we could do some scripting. I journal every day, so I do some kind of writing and reflection every day on how things are going, but scripting can be a nice additional thing to do. I don't do it every day, but what I like to do is open up a blank Word document. I will journal by hand. I like writing things, but with scripting, I think it's better to type, just because you can have lots of ideas and lots of feelings. It's a lot easier to get it down quickly when you're typing. What I like to do is to set a 10-minute timer. It's the kind of thing that, like creative writing, I could just keep writing because it's really fun. Scripting is about writing as if you already have your dream life or your dream career, whatever thing you want to focus on. The way that I like to structure it is to write like a day in my life as if it's like my ideal day in the future. So I describe like what my morning routine is, where am I living, what does that look like, what is my job, what little habits do I do throughout the day, what things do I notice, do I notice that I've got nice rugs on the floor which are soft under my feet. Like, pick out specific details, things that really will bring you into the scene. Are you imagining that you have a lovely apartment with big windows, so the sun is coming in a lovely way, and you're noticing that, and you're noticing the patterns that it makes on the floor? Anything like that which is connecting you to a really wholesome feeling of being complete, like of having your dream life and just being grateful for that. I think gratitude is an important element when you're doing your scripting, when you're writing. Write in the present tense to say, I get up and I do this, or I look across and I see my lovely kitchen, or I see my dog, or whatever you have in your ideal version of your life. Bringing gratitude into that and saying, I'm grateful for my dog, or I look across the room and I'm grateful for my flat with the big windows because look at the sunshine coming in, it's so beautiful. I can go sit in the sun and I feel warm and calm, peaceful, sitting in the sun reading my book. Gratitude is an interesting thing to bring into scripting because it means that you already have the thing, which is what we're trying to do when we're scripting. We're writing as if we already have this dream life. If you want to focus on your dream career or the way you look or your dream home, if you're writing about that as if you already have it, and you're also then adding gratitude. Gratitude is saying, I have this and I'm grateful for it. You can't be grateful for it if you don't have it. And really focus on the way you feel when you're doing this. You need to feel connected, excited, really invested in what you're writing, because you're writing about your dream life, the dream reality that you want to create. It should be fun to write about. You should be like, oh, this is so cool, and then this will be my career. I'm going to work from home, or I'm going to get the bus and do this, or I'm going to make this much money, or I'm going to have this free time, or I'm going to have this dog or these pets. It should create that like fun, I can do this I'm so grateful for this feeling. Just take 10 minutes to do this. If you want like a prompt, I would suggest doing what would a day in my life look like, living my dream life. As I say, that's what I do. I will write day in the life. This will help you reprogram your mind because you're getting into the feeling state of what it's like to have all of these things that you hope to have when you become your dream self. It's getting you into the feeling of what that will be like. It's really exciting. I mentioned earlier a phrase which I heard many years ago and which has become like a running thing in my family. It's hate something, change something. This can be helpful as a little phrase to keep in mind, maybe repeat to yourself, remind yourself of. I certainly use it. And as I say, it's like a thing in my family that we'll say to each other, like, hate something, change something. Like, if you're not happy with what you're like now, do something about it. You have the ability to do that. That is really amazing. Just the fact that we can change. I know people say people don't change, and to be honest, it does hold true for a lot of things, just because it's really easy to get into a particular habit and you're like, this is just who I am. But like, you do have the ability to change, which is what this video is all about reprogramming your mind. Hate something, change something. This is a good like reminder in terms of changing your mindset or reprogramming your mind. I like to think about it as well in terms of are you being taught the same lesson over and over again? Do things keep happening which keep making you think, oh, I need to do that, I need to start journaling, I need to have a clear out? Like, I'm not talking about like, oh, seeing signs and things. Like, if that's what you're like I do that, that can be a helpful thing to give you like a push to do something, whether it's like, maybe it is the time for me to do this thing. If that gives you confidence and helps you to take action, do something that maybe you've been thinking about but you've been too scared to start. Yes. People can be like, oh, seeing a sign, everything's random. Like, it can be really like cool to be like, the universe doesn't care, we're just on this floating rock in space, nothing matters, coincidence is everything and meaning is nothing and signs don't exist. And I'm like, that's cool if that's your worldview, but I like to use anything I can to help me get to where I want to go. So if it's going to help me to be like, oh, I've been thinking about something and now I'm seeing signs to do it, whether it's like something someone says or like an advert, like anything random like that, I'm like, well, I'm going to take advantage of that and be like, yes, maybe this is a sign for me to be brave enough to take the step, whether it's to start a YouTube channel or to like cut your hair. It doesn't have to be like something serious or deep in terms of changing your mindset. It could be like, yeah, a sign. There's a sign for me to get my hair cut a different way. There's two worldviews. You can either be like, I'm going to be like, the universe is going to teach me the same lesson over and over again until I learn it, or you can view it completely outside of that in like the cool, indifferent way that I just mentioned, where you can think, oh, the same thing is just going to keep happening unless I do something about it. I find it more helpful to go with this one, with the I'm being taught this lesson, it's not going to go away until I pay attention to it. Are you repeatedly being directed to something, or it all keeps coming back to this one problem and you don't want to deal with that, but that problem is now growing and affecting everything else in your life? This was what it was like with my addiction. It felt like nothing would work until I sorted that out. Anytime I made any progress, whether it was I'm gonna go for a walk every day, or I'm going to try and eat more healthily, I'm going to reach out more and try and ask for help. Anytime I thought I was making any kind of progress with that, a lot of it would just unravel, because the biggest problem was my addiction. You can't be healthy and also have an addiction. Like, you can't eat healthy and also have an addiction. You can't have meaningful connections and also be addicted to something. It doesn't work. And it's hard to face that thing and be like, oh, this is the problem. It's so easy to be like, oh, I'm gonna pin this on, like, I have bad sleep, or I have all of this bad stuff happen to me, and so that's why I'm like this. And those things can all be true. But if there's one thing that it keeps coming back to, you're just going to be hit over the head with that lesson over and over again until you decide to sort it out. Then I did try and sort out my addiction. Like, I went and got help. I'm not cured, because you can't be cured from something like this. It's like an ongoing thing, but like, I can manage it now and things are working out better. I have been able to reprogram my mind. I am a lot closer to that dream reality that I'm trying to create for myself, because I faced the problem. I finally was like, oh, this is the lesson that I'm being taught. I'm going to pay attention to it instead of trying to ignore it. On my vision board for the year, I have the phrase, you have two choices, evolve or repeat. And I think that is what it's like when you're struggling with, whether you're struggling with like self-esteem, or I talked about addiction, getting stuck in like a vicious cycle of self-sabotage, maybe getting stuck in like a vicious cycle with anything. Until you deal with that thing, you're not going to be able to make any real progress with anything else. You're going to be taught the same lesson over and over again. You're going to be reminded of the same thing. Like, it's always going to be, you need to sort this first. However much you want to avoid it, you don't want to face it. I didn't want to face my addiction, but I had to in order to make any progress with anything else. And to be able to reprogram my mind in any meaningful way, I had to face this thing, evolve or repeat. You can either be like, I'm going to do something about this, or you're going to just be caught in the same loop that you're in now. It's the same with the phrase, which can also be helpful. I like evolve or repeat because that's very succinct. You get that stuck in your head, it's not going to go away. But it's the same thing as, which would you prefer, the pain of change or the pain of staying the same? If you're unhappy with where you're at now, and if you want to move closer to your dream reality, you can either be in the discomfort you're in now of seeing where you want to be versus where you are and feeling sad about that. That's the pain of staying the same. Or are you going to decide to make some changes, reprogram your mind, which yes might be uncomfortable. You'll have to wrestle with a lot of things, like I said with my addiction. Like, that's a big thing to deal with, but it's like the pain of change or the pain of staying the same. And if you're watching this, you probably aren't at that extreme thing that I was at, where I was basically forced to change because otherwise I was gonna die. So evolve or repeat. Are you being taught the same lesson over and over again? Can you decide to face that thing? Hate something, change something. Choose to reprogram your mind to view discomfort as something that you can use as fuel, as opposed to something which is going to scare you or have you frozen in inaction. The pain of change versus the pain of staying the same. Evolve or repeat. Hate something, change something. Ignore the fact that this is a Christmas mug. I love tea so much. I love tea. I think part of, I've got my notes here, part of reprogramming your mind to create a different reality to the one that you're in, I think a big part of that is to pay attention to what some people call your mental diet. I prefer to think of it as like your mental environment. So this is both internal and external. So if we start with internal, this is to do with your thoughts. So one way, like we talked about, is to journal, because that makes you become more aware of what's going on, particularly free writing, or if we're thinking about the future that you want, the dream reality that you want to create, scripting, like we said, can be a really useful tool. So that is monitoring your internal mental environment to be on the lookout for these subconscious negative thoughts or any limiting beliefs that you have, which might keep popping up and stopping you from getting to that dream reality or the dream life that you're trying to create for yourself. If we look at then the external factors in terms of your mental environment, there are two main things. It's the media that you consume, but it's also who you surround yourself with. And sometimes we don't have a choice. If it's colleagues or people you live with who ideally you wouldn't live with, friends of friends, people you hang out with, there are people we can choose to avoid. Maybe you've noticed a friend is always dragging you down, or maybe it's not even that, it's you leave an interaction with this specific person and you always feel a bit deflated or a bit down and a bit like, oh, they talked a lot about themselves. You start doubting things that you said. These are all signs that, yeah, maybe you should avoid that person, but it's not always possible to avoid people. If, like we talked about, you work with them or you live with them and you don't necessarily have a choice. But then you can work to minimize your interactions with those people, or at least you can mentally prepare. So when you know you're going into a situation with a family member who tends to be very negative or say horrible things about you or other people, you can prepare for that. You're at least aware of it, and you can then go into that situation that you have to be at, that family occasion. And because you have that awareness, anything they do say, it might not hurt you or affect you in the way that it would have done if you hadn't prepared for that, and then it could have caught you off guard. But the other external factors, I mentioned media. If we're feeling bad, and like I go through phases of this as well, And I think sometimes it can be like a necessary step or even a healing thing to put on sad music, watch your favourite sad film, a rainy day film that feels very comforting, but it also makes you feel small, like it's very much in your comfort zone. We talked about like the growth mindset and about your comfort zone earlier. It can be a necessary part of working through those feelings to just let yourself feel it and let yourself be sad for a while. So I don't think we should be like leaning into toxic positivity and being like, oh yeah, I'm feeling sad, but like I'm gonna paper over it and like pretend that everything's fine or everything has to be good, like I need to be positive if I'm gonna reprogram my mind. That's not helpful. But there also comes a point where continuously indulging in those sad songs, say, or watching this film that makes you feel sad, where that is not helpful anymore, and instead of just feeling the thing and then sensing, oh, it's time to move on now, you get stuck in that sadness, and it can become a vicious circle where you feel bad initially, so you put on the sad song, but then through listening to the sad songs, you are then feeling sad, like you're feeding that sadness, and you get trapped in a vicious circle. And you can break out of that and go into a virtuous circle then by putting on happier sounding things, which is where we're talking about your mental environment. You can choose what you're going to listen to and what you're going to pay attention to. I think as well, sometimes we can treat social media as an escape, whether your thing is scrolling on Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter. Mine's Twitter. It can be so easy when you have the app or the browser open and you're already logged in, so easy to just open that and switch off for a bit, particularly when you're feeling bad. But if we can start to be intentional with our time, be aware of that impulse to always open Instagram, or when you're feeling uncomfortable, you don't want to sit with whatever you're feeling, you open Twitter. If you can be aware of that and stop doing that, which is such an easy thing to say, but we're talking about how you can choose what you give your attention to. So do you want to just switch off and like automatically start scrolling, or do you want to think, okay, I can now put on some music that I know lifts me up, or I can put on a podcast that encourages me, not even to do with self-development stuff, but just if you put on a podcast like a current affairs podcast hosted by people that you like listening to, talking about a subject that interests you, not even to do with improving your life or anything, just something that's fun, that gives you like a light-hearted feeling, and that you're not using as escape, but that you're using to help strengthen your mindset, help reprogram your mind, filling your mind with positive or interesting, fun, entertaining, light-hearted things that you have chosen specifically to give your attention to, and not passively scroll and be distracted. So if you can start cultivating that kind of helpful and conscious mental environment for yourself, that is going to make it a lot easier to reprogram your mind, reset your mindset, and start creating your dream reality. Because as well, ask yourself, this dream version of yourself, or this dream life that you want to create, your dream reality that you want to live out day after day, is that involving a lot of scrolling on Instagram? Yeah, sure, you might want to check in with either your friends' stories, or maybe you follow like some celebrities or influencers, actors, podcasters, whoever. You follow these people, you want to see what they're up to, or you enjoy their posts. Fine, but is your dream version of yourself scrolling for hours, feeling rubbish, feeding into, like we talked about with music, with sad songs, but like feeding into that negative loop of, oh, I'm feeling awful about myself, or I'm feeling bored, or I'm not happy with my life, so I'm just gonna scroll for a while and stare at my phone or stare at my computer? Is your dream self doing that in your dream reality, your dream version of your life that you are working towards and that will exist in the future? Are you spending your time doing those things? Probably not. So it's then about, my dream self is not doing that, or in my dream version of my life, I'm not spending 3 hours scrolling, so I don't need to do that today. What can I do instead? Okay, maybe I'm just gonna do some cooking and listen to a podcast. Maybe I feel like I want to go for a walk and listen to a podcast. Maybe you just feel awful and you're just like, I can't do anything today. Even then, instead of putting on your comfort TV show, instead of putting on your sad playlist, you can put on something encouraging or something lighthearted, something fun that you know will make you laugh, whether that's an audiobook you like the Jeeves and Wooster audiobooks, or Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy audiobooks help me, because it's just funny. It's silly, and it's reconnecting you with some joyful part of yourself instead of engaging in like the sadness, overindulging in that, because that feeling is not going to get you anywhere. Once you try and cultivate deliberately a nice like mental environment, get yourself in a nice headspace through the things that you listen to or the things that you choose to give your attention to, choose to interact with, that's going to go a long way to reprogramming your mind and creating this dream reality where you have healthy coping mechanisms. You can feel sadness, feel pain, feel discomfort, but you don't have to be caught in the vicious cycle of it. I mentioned a couple of my favourite audiobooks. Like I said, current affairs podcasts. Off Menu is a good podcast. There are so many out there for like whatever kind of thing you want to listen to. You will be able to find something that brings you joy, reminds you to be lighthearted and silly. So I hope you're able to do that. Thank you so much for watching Dream Self Diaries, a series I'm doing on this channel which is dedicated to helping you develop healthy habits and level up your mindset so that you can embody your dream self today. If you want to see more videos about how to become your dream self, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.